Stephanie Kawai, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's my first time on the podcast, so I'm not sure what to expect, but looking forward to seeing where the conversation leads.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we really appreciate your time coming on today. A lot of our listeners will be familiar with you and your organisations already, but for those that aren't, perhaps if you can just give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and what brought you to Japan.
Okay, so as you mentioned, I'm Stephanie Kawai. I've been in Japan now for 21 years this year. I've got 3 children of my own, they're all boys. My oldest is 13, middle one just turned 10 recently, and the youngest is 7. And I run Tokyo Mothers Group, Tokyo Pregnancy Group, and I'm also a Tokyo Doula and run Tokyo Doula Support as well. And as to your question of what brought me to Japan, there was no reason. I mean, I came to teach English, but it was kind of a bit on a whim. Back in 2000, in the summer of 2000, I saw an ad in the paper, because that's where we looked for jobs back then, of, the possibility to teach English in Japan. I thought, that sounds interesting. I applied and went through the training, got posted to an English conversation school in Osaka. And 3 months later, after that job ad that I saw in the paper, I was in Osaka, and now I'm in Tokyo. But I was in Osaka for the first 3 years that I was here.
Okay, and then what brought you to Tokyo?
Basically, I'd already met my husband, or the man that was going to be my husband, in Osaka. He's originally from Osaka, and we both decided to transfer to Tokyo just for a change. So that was back in 2003 that we moved to Tokyo together.
Right. Oh, very cool. And so tell us about the Tokyo Mothers Group and Tokyo Pregnancy Group. How did that all start?
So I guess I'll start with Tokyo Pregnancy Group first. And that group has been around for around 20 years now.
Wow.
Obviously not on Facebook, because there was no Facebook 20 years ago. It was kind of a blog and just a meetup group that would meet regularly and just kind of share information about pregnancy and anything related to that, or childbirth issues, etc., postpartum in Tokyo. And obviously over the years that group has grown, and since Facebook, like anything, it's just exploded since then, because that's where all of the conversation happens. People can just post questions up, I'm in such and such area looking for a hospital, these are my preferences, does anyone know of a good place around here, I'm looking for an English speaking doctor, all kinds of questions. And those are just a couple, just to name 2 out of many. And so I kind of became, I call myself the coordinator or director of Tokyo Pregnancy Group. It's more kind of like a custodian, I think, because as I say, the group has been around for so long, and it's just become part of Tokyo for English speakers here. It's just been in existence for that long that I think probably most women who have had a baby here will have heard of it, if not been a member at some point. So for me, particularly because it does relate a lot to the work that I do as a doula, it's just become really important for me to maintain the quality of the group, to keep the group going, to keep the group active. And obviously the past year with coronavirus, there have been, a few more challenges than usual with all of that, but we've navigated it. It's all going good. Yeah.
And your work as a doula, I heard a dingo off there.
Actually,
we
that's
know
exactly it.
We know that you have a client who is about to go into labour. Is that correct?
She's in labour, and actually, the message says. So this particular client, she's in Toyama. So, the beauty of virtual support, with things like Zoom, FaceTime, etc., is like you don't even have to be in the same city to support someone in labour. But she's 3 centimeters now and having very regular contractions, and the doctors say she is doing good, according to her husband, who's literally just updated me. So
oh, that's awesome.
That's so funny.
Oh, here we go again.
I'm just going to turn that volume off. I can see my phone, so I can see when the things, but those things will probably happen quite a lot. So I'll just turn the volume off. No,
that's very exciting, and we wish your client all the best with the delivery.
And
so, did you get involved with the group when you had your first child, or how did you get involved?
Yeah, no, basically that's it. Yes, so through each of my pregnancies, I was very actively involved, and also I was a speaker back in the day as well about Tokyo Mothers Group, which is the other very large group that I run.
Yep.
And the two groups kind of coexist very well together because, you know, one leads into the next very, very naturally. You know, you have your baby, you move over to Tokyo Mothers Group. So yeah, no, it's been a great group to run. I've enjoyed so much getting to meet so many wonderful speakers, because what we do as TPG is hold every other week a meeting with a guest speaker. Could be anything related to pregnancy, childbirth, parenting, women's issues, children related topics, etc. We have such a broad variety of speakers, and finding out about all of the speakers that we've had, the services that they offer, that's been really, really interesting. So just yesterday, actually, we had our most recent TPG meeting, and that was with Brett Imura, who also has been active in the Tokyo birth scene for many, many years herself, although now she lives in the US, but she's a childbirth educator, and she was sharing, you know, recent research related to COVID and how that impacts birth, or potentially could impact birth in Japan. So that's just like one example of the meetings that we hold. Others could be much more informal. Others could kind of be, you know, more related to you know, nutrition, for example, health and fitness in pregnancy,
yep.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah, very cool. And are these meetings conducted live, or have they been done virtually? And have you had to change that given the current circumstance over the last year?
Yeah. So originally, TPG has always been in-person meetings, and up until we couldn't hold them anymore last year. So I think the last one that we held in person last year was in March. And then since then, we've gone on to Zoom for all of our meetings. And obviously it's not ideal in some ways. It's nice to have that real kind of proper face-to-face interaction and to meet in person. But it's better than nothing for sure. And I think for those that don't live in Tokyo, or perhaps would have found it harder to attend our meetings in person because of work, or just because the distance was just a bit too far for them, at least Zoom has opened it up to those people. So yeah,
I think that there's obviously pros and cons with doing anything virtually and compared to doing it live, but I know just from an education perspective, it has made continuing education in some ways a lot easier. There's a lot more organisations just in our field in medicine and fitness that have started doing courses online that they never did before, so you have sort of more access to that information. And and even in Club 360, our internal continuing education program, we're doing a lot more online, which makes it easier for people to attend. So
definitely.
Yeah. And how many people usually do you get these meetings?
It really depends on the meeting, but I would probably say on average, maybe 10 women attending the meetings each time. Sometimes it could be more than that. Just really depends. But
Yeah, that's fantastic. And aside from the meetings, I guess the main service you offer is that sort of forum, that question and answer forum on Facebook, is that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, I mean, the Facebook group is used however anyone wants to use it. So it could be that they come on there just to get a question answered, or they come on there looking for friends, support, you know, people to form their tribe with, so to speak, because, you know, especially when you're in a foreign country, going through a pregnancy, and all of the challenges maybe that might come with that, cultural issues, etc. Just going through that with other people can make a big difference. So, you know, some people may dip in and out, other people may be on there all the time, and it serves everyone's needs.
Yeah. And I mean, in your time being involved with the groups, what have you seen so the major questions that people have, the major issues that people have, especially both giving birth and also going through the parenting process in Tokyo or in Japan?
I mean, there are so many. Probably some of the big ones related to cultural expectations. If we think just about childbirth, pregnancy and childbirth. You know, whilst the physiology of it is the same all over the world, culturally it could be approached a little bit differently. So I think questions kind of around what to expect in Japan, what to expect in particular hospitals or birth clinics, taking into account, you know, the woman's birth preferences, etc. Those are big ones, because it can really be quite varied here. There's no one way is the only way that things are done in hospitals here, and to understand the system that are in place in different hospitals or clinics is important. Yeah, so that's probably a big thing that comes up a lot in the groups. But yeah, I can't kind of think off the top of my head of other questions. I mean, there are just so many. Probably any question that you can think of
has been asked.
Has probably been asked at some point. Yeah.
And you mentioned off the top that COVID has changed some things for you. Obviously, that the meetings is an example of that. What other main challenges has the whole COVID situation over the last year presented for? I guess starting off with the pregnancy group and expecting mothers. How has that sort of influenced that side of things?
Well, I think, you know, before it would have been much easier to meet in person, to grab a coffee, go for a lunch, go for a big group lunch, even with other women expecting around the same time. And obviously people have been understandably a lot more cautious about doing that. So I think for some it has been a little bit harder perhaps to form closer friendships and to kind of form that tribe around them. Probably a little bit more challenging than before, for sure. And also there have been a lot of restrictions put in place in pretty much most, I won't say all because it's not all, but pretty much most hospitals, not just in the Tokyo area, but countrywide. That many hospitals have restricted partner support, whether it's from a husband, a partner, other support person. Many places don't allow that support at all. Other places allow it, but only for very short periods of time. For example, the last 1 or 2 hours of the labour only, by which point the woman's already done all the hard work. And other places, there are a few places that are still allowing consistent support, but those are definitely few and far between. And, you know, the landscape with coronavirus that way has kind of really changed a lot over the past year. You know, hospitals have introduced restrictions, relaxed them, reintroduced them, introduced them more strongly. It's just been really up or down. And I think, you know, that's not been so helpful. You know, women kind of don't want to have that uncertainty when they're pregnant of, you know, is my husband or partner actually going to be allowed to be in the room with me or not? So yeah, that's been quite tough, I think, for a lot of people. And so yeah, the groups have kind of been at least an ear for all of that, and a place that women can go to talk about it. And while it's not great, at least feel that they're not the only ones going through these things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I guess the restrictions that have been applied in hospitals in Japan, have they been consistent with those that have been applied in hospitals, in maternity wards outside Japan?
I'm not so sure about that because I don't really know fully about what's going on in other countries that way. So yeah, I can't really speak about that, I don't think. But I do feel that here they are particularly restrictive and not necessarily in line with what research says.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
And also not in line with what the World Health Organization says, which that even under these COVID-19 times, a woman has the right to a birth partner of their choice. And whilst you may have a doctor that's helping you, or not helping you, but, you know, coming in and out of your room in labor, or whilst you might have a midwife that might stay for a little bit longer than they normally would in labor, it's not a birth companion of your choice. It's not your support person. It's the hospital member of staff. So it is very, very different. Yeah. And
given that, what are some of the things that you found helpful for mothers to get past that? Not get past that, but you know, to feel, you know, somewhat relaxed and comfortable with, I guess, a birthing procedure that's slightly different, or environment that's slightly different to what they're expecting.
Yeah, well, preparation definitely is the key, and really understanding what policies are in place in, that woman's particular birth clinic or birth hospital. So knowing that in advance is really important. And then preparing, depending on the restrictions, preparing for, how that could look on the day, with support from a husband or a partner virtually, a doula if a woman were to have one, such as myself, virtually. And just kind of also knowing how she can help herself a little bit more easily in labor, with positions, comfort measures, breathing techniques, which for me is a big one, and so on and so forth that way. Yeah.
And I guess running a group like this must come with some challenges. What are some of the things that you've found challenging about running the groups?
Thankfully, there haven't been too many big challenges with running the groups. I mean, we do have women or people in general, from all over the world in both of the groups. So it's culturally both of the groups are very, very culturally diverse groups that way. And obviously, depending on where you're from, you may have different expectations, different thoughts, different opinions on certain things. I mean, as we all do as individuals anyway. So it doesn't happen so often, but every now and then there can be some kind of differences of opinion that we do kind of moderate a little bit more closely. Nothing that's ever turned really nasty. And I think that's the great thing about the groups, that the members are actually, when it comes down to it, all very, very respectful. Yeah. But just, I think for everyone to have an awareness that we don't all think the same, we aren't all from the same place, and that we all do come from very different backgrounds, lifestyles, and different ways of thinking. So that's probably one of the challenges. And also another one that every so often I do caution people about is, when you're talking about very, very personal issues that sometimes can happen on the groups, just to be aware that nothing online is ever truly private. So just always be a little bit kind of mindful of what you're posting up, because some of the things that some people do post up from time to time can be extremely personal in nature, and yes, we don't want to compromise anybody's health, safety, or anything that way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So obviously a lot of people get a lot out of the work that you and your group does in Tokyo. Is there anything that you're aiming to do with either of the groups in the future to sort of further this mission?
Oh, you have no idea how long my list of what I would like to do is. I'm not even joking. I add to it constantly. Like, I want to do this, I want to do that. There's so much. A big thing for me with both of the groups, with both Tokyo Mothers Group and Tokyo Pregnancy Group, with their respective websites, because they're not just Facebook groups. They originally, started as blogs, as websites.
Yeah.
Is to add more to our resources sections on those two groups.
Right.
That's a huge work in progress, though, because as you know yourself, things change a lot here in Tokyo. Places close, new places open, people move away, etc. So updating that is a long time thing. It's not something that can be done just by knocking it out in a couple of days. It needs constant revision. So working more fully on that is something that I really, really want to do. Also, a couple of years ago, before coronavirus, we did have a little, what was it called? Tokyo, what was it called? Mum's Spotlight. I can't even remember what we called it then, but like a little question and answer with different mums in the Tokyo community who are doing interesting things, and we would kind of do an interview with them and post that up on the site as well. So that's something that I kind of want to start again, because that was interesting to hear more about, interesting mums in the community.
Yeah.
And there's just so many things, but the resources one is the biggest for both of the groups.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic thing to build upon. Yeah, I guess changing lines a little bit, within the group, are there any opportunities for sponsorship? Do you work with in collaboration with other companies? yeah, what are some of the things that you've got going on there?
Yeah, with Tokyo Mothers Group, actually, we do have sponsorship options because obviously, to maintain the website and the administrative costs and all of the things associated that way, we do need some funds. And also we use those funds towards seasonal events that we would hold for families pre-COVID. Obviously, right now, these things are on hold. But we did used to hold like big seasonal, like Easter Hanami events, Halloween events that would be attended by over 50 families each time. So with sponsorship options, if there's any business, company, school, for example, that feels that their services would be interesting and suited to the needs of the members of Tokyo Mothers Group, then they are welcome to become sponsors. And the sponsors that we do have, we know quite well ourselves or have had excellent recommendations from our members for them to be sponsors. So I think the integrity of our sponsors is also really important to us too.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's great to know. Yeah. Okay. I guess sort of starting to wrap up, for new mothers, I guess first-time mothers in Tokyo, perhaps they're relatively new to Tokyo. What are some of the biggest tips? It might be one or two or three tips that you could give new mothers here. What are the big sort of chunks of advice if you were to narrow it down to a couple?
Definitely join Tokyo Mothers Group, because that really is a great way, but a great way to connect to other parents, find women or other families that are living near where you are, because, obviously those are the ones that will be easier to meet up with. And you can get a lot of really great information and advice through the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to reach out for help. We've all been new mothers or new parents even at some time or another. And also, just to mention, like Tokyo Mothers Group, while it's always been known as Tokyo Mothers Group, fathers are very welcome. We do have a number of dads in the group as well. So, dads are also very welcome to reach out if they have questions or looking for certain resources or support in whatever that may be.
Okay, that's great to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, really appreciate your time today, but also all the great work that you do for the families here in Tokyo. I know my own wife, Alana, really gets a lot out of the group and has met a lot of people through the group. Thank you very much. Obviously, if people want to find you and want to get in touch with the group, pretty straightforward, right? Just the Facebook group's the easiest place to... Yeah.
So, I mean, if you just Google Tokyo Mothers Group online, it will come up straight away. Or just search on Facebook for it. And the only thing that we do ask is that people do read what the joining steps are. So if they just go to the group description, and the same information will also be on the website. It outlines our joining steps because we are quite strict. The group is really special and important to me and the team of women that I have helping me. And so we're very careful about who we let into the group. So we kind of go through each request to join individually, and so following the joining steps is a big part of that.
Yeah. Okay. And we will put the link in the show notes as well.
Yeah, brilliant.
So if anyone wants to just follow that link and they can find the site. So thanks very much again, Stephanie, and we will hopefully get you back relatively soon to chat about some of the doula work that you do and maybe touch on a few other more specific topics. For any listeners, if you do have any specific topics that you would like Stephanie to talk about, then please let us know, and we'll get it back on and have another chat. So thanks very much for your time, and we'll hope to speak again soon.
Thank you very much, Sam, for having me. I've loved talking. That was fun.